it just, ended up that we were in the midst of the first ascent on the day, and we were in the middle of this pretty epic climb. We saw the helicopter spinning overhead. There were some clouds kind of around us, but it was like, oh, that's cool. Hopefully they got something.
We think that this is going to be a meaningful contribution in the tapestry of all these different powerful climbing films and exploration films in its own way. And even in the context of the last few years, how exploration has changed. And now both Freddie and myself and all of us as a community, we're like, oh, it's about way more than just ourselves and these kind of white guy explorations, these privileged white guy explorations, and what can we do in the future.
Following is my conversation with Freddie Wilkinson and Renan Ozturk, co-directors of the documentary film Sanctity of Space. It premieres in 13 theaters across the United States this week. I'm honored to have these two here to talk to me at the same time. I can barely get one of them locked down, let alone two at the same time. I will be sharing with you a Zoom interview that I did with them May 9th, 2022, about how the film came together, about their obsession with the Tooth Traverse in Alaska, which rises up out of the Great Gorge, and also of their admiration for the great Bradford Washburn, a pioneer in aerial photography. He's known as the modern-day founder of the Boston Museum of Science. He mapped Everest, the Grand Canyon, and even Squam Lake here in beautiful New Hampshire. This film is a beautiful testament to the pioneers that came before us and inspired us as mountaineers and climbers. Renan and Freddie dropped by my cabin in Jackson, I think it was about 10 years ago to the year, to look through all the photographs, letters, information, and volumes of videotape recordings I had done with Bradford dating back to our 2000 expedition in Alaska together, and previously including his aerial footage, 35 millimeter film footage from National Geographic doing aerial surveys in Alaska. I had previously done a documentary with Bradford that he insisted be called Alaskan Reminiscences, 60 Years of Adventure with Bradford and Barbara Washburn. And in the hands of Freddie and Renan, some of the footage that they took and some of the audio of Brad put him right back to life as if he had never left us. It brought me to tears in one segment where they recreated Bradford getting into the plane with one of the old Fairchild cameras that he used to use. It's a beautiful film, a beautiful testament, and as I explained it to the two of them, it really felt like it was a film about love, about respect, about the admiration not only of the mountains, but the people who inspire us to go there. And as they both said, it's truly about sharing that love of the mountains and expanding it to anyone who might be interested or curious about learning more. Let's take a look of a short clip of this gorgeous teaser.
For young climbers, the big challenge is finding any blank spots that are left.
We're launching.
It's not just going up and getting something done. They're tying their whole life into the whole climb.
Just looking for inspiration. I kept on circling back to the Moose's Tooth in Brad Washburn photos.
He's the greatest aerial mountain photographer of all time.
When you discover a big climb that's never been done, it kind of feels like falling in love.
Before I get to the interview with Freddie and Renan, I ask that you please subscribe wherever you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or listening to the podcast, and share this with anybody that might be interested, and especially people that you care about. It means a lot, and it helps get it out there to others who might also be interested. And now to my May 9th, 2022 interview with Freddie Wilkinson and Renan Ozturk. co-directors of Sanctity of Space.
The film so it officially released in LA and New York last Friday.
Oh, gotcha.
But now it's this Friday. It's opening in about like 15 cities.
You, Renan and Freddie, to get you guys in the same room, technically, is pretty awesome. I think the last time, even though this is virtual, the last time we were in the same room, literally together, was in the early stages of Sanctity of Space. I think it didn't have a name yet back then. And you came up to the cabin in Jackson, and my dog was walking all over those huge prints of Brad Washburn, and you went through all the tapes. So just memorizing that's about 10 years ago. This project is a long time coming. It's got to feel good to be here at essentially the sunrise of letting the world see it finally.
Absolutely, it's been a long journey for both of us, and but good to be here.
Yeah, well, tell me about it. So, if somebody had never heard about it and didn't even know who you guys were, what is this film about? I mean, we know as a climber, the Moose's Traverse is going to draw a lot of people in, but if I were to say what the subplot is, it's a lot about love and mountains and friendships and the inspiration that brings one to go to those places. So if you could just tell me a little bit about it and what inspired you to really almost, kind of devote yourselves, sacrifice yourselves to seeing this thing come to reality.
Yeah, I just want to also just thank you, Tom, because you're a huge part of this film in so many ways. You knew Washburn personally and contributed footage, and a lot of the ethos of this film has you inside it as well. So
thanks. That's awesome.
Huge thank you there. And I think for us, like the quick elevator pitch of this film has to do with answering the question of why. Like, why do you do these things? Why do climbers go into the mountains and risk their lives? And it's a cheesy question, and as you know, Mallory's famous response, like, because it's there. This was our really personal response that took us a long time to come out with. That hopefully the answer is within the alchemy of visuals and the history of Washburn, and you can kind of like get a sense of what it is without even having to answer it, because I definitely won't be able to put it into words right now.
Well, it's a beautiful film, and if you were just to put pretty music on in the background and watch it without even the narrative, it's a good, entertaining watch. And I will admit readily that in the last hour, I haven't been able to consume the hour and 40 minutes of it, but it's beautifully done. And Renan, I think you nailed it. It's what calls us to the mountains, and a lot of it is that inspiration. And you even said it's when you see a mountain that you want to climb, it's like falling in love. And I was like, well, I don't think I've ever heard that before, but I knew it. The minute I heard you say it, I was like, exactly. And there's a passion in there to risk it all. And it comes out in this film. And so way back, you showed me this beautiful clip that was essentially a recreation of Bradford Washburn flying up over the Alaska Range and the Great Gorge with his old Fairchild camera. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And did you know how that was really going to be integrated into the film, or were you doing a mini vignette for that?
To backtrack a little bit and kind of just underline some of the things Renan was saying, Tom, when we were pitching, part of the pitch for the film was that, a lot of the storytelling with mountain climbing and adventure inevitably ends up sort of spiraling around death and these life and death stakes that engender a self-seriousness that, like, to me doesn't always look that good or that interesting as a spectator, viewer, audience. And as storytellers and participants, it's like, well, let's talk about how beautiful it is, not how scared we are, because we're going to the mountains. You know, we're not going at gunpoint. We're not getting drafted. We're not going there to make the world a better place the way, you know, firefighters and, you know, social activists and so many other people do in other lines of work. It's a privilege to go to the mountains, and we do it because it's stinking beautiful and special in that right. And I don't know, but somehow for me, that was just a message I wanted to try to convey.
You did it. And so when, as a filmmaker, which both of you are, and as a climber, how do you do that? How do you tell that story? Honestly, I mean, from a serious question, from an idea, it sounds great when you're in base camp waiting out a storm, drinking coffee. This would be great. To a beautiful film on a screen in a movie theater. You know, really, that's where the grind comes in. That's the suffer fest right there, perhaps, right?
I mean, 10 years, but it was something that, you know, it really started for us when the climb ended. We you know, as is shown in the film, we got totally sucked in by the tooth traverse. In the course of doing it, we had this idea, let's try to capture it from the air. And, you know, now that Renan especially is really a world famous adventure filmmaker, it seems like, you know, probably natural to some of your listeners that he would have a helicopter following him around. But 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. And, you know, as a matter of fact, this was probably like the first time he had ever played with helicopters. Either of us had tried to do cinematography. So, you know, we had to put our own skin in the game. Like, we didn't have sponsor money. I think we each put up like 8 or 10 grand. And we did have Renan's production company providing some logistic support, and, you know, a producer who would kind of take calls to make us seem professional. But we basically, it all came down to one day. And, you know, we had a helicopter, camera tech, equipment, all has to get located in Talkeetna. And, you know, we couldn't afford anymore. And so, you know, we just kind of went into it, this attitude, like, you know, we're just going to roll the dice and see what happens. And it just, you know, ended up that we were in the midst of the first ascent on the day, and the weather aligned, and all of it came together. And, you know, when we got back, we didn't know any of that was happening at the time. We were in the middle of this pretty epic climb. We saw the helicopter spinning overhead. There were some clouds kind of around us, but it was like, oh, that's cool. Hopefully they got something. And then, you know, we did the climb. Takes a few days to pack up your base camp, get back to civilization. We get back to civilization, and there at the airport in the air taxi office is the hard drive of the capture from the helicopter that day. And I remember like plugging it into a laptop and looking at it for the first time and being like, you know, well, I'll be, that's pretty epic. And then like a split second later, I was like, it looks just like a Brad Washburn photo. And, you know, 10 years later, here we are. But Renan has some perspective on this too, as well.
Yeah, it meant a lot to us to like try to film something on an actual first ascent. You see a lot of that kind of Hollywood style filmmaking, kind of it all comes back to your other question of like the recreations and everything like that. We just wanted to show the range the way that Brad would, and have people understand what it was like for him back in the early days of hanging out at open door of an airplane in the 50s. And we realized that we needed to have a creative way to show that. So that shoot was pretty intentional. It was like also very seat of our pants in terms of how it came together. In terms of even the camera used for the shoot was actually Brad's camera from what was the name of the museum, Freddie?
Museum of the North,
Museum of the
University Alaska Fairbanks.
In Fairbanks.
Yeah, and they wouldn't. Brad had donated the camera before he died to the museum, and he had asked for it back a few times. They wouldn't give it to him for some reason. We convinced them that we were going to hang it over the range one last time and give it a swan song. And yeah, it was just all those little pieces is what it takes to like make this longer film. And like Freddie put in years of archival research, digitizing tapes, including yours, for the first time, so that they could be in this format. The whole story of Lucania, a lot of that stuff was digitized for the first time. The shots of Brad with the sifting the mud through his hands before they take off on the mud flats, using a cocktail bar as makeshift skis in the bottom of a plane, with a history of Alaska aviation. So yeah, there's a lot of stories within the tapestry of the whole film, but overall it's like, I think for us it's meant to show why we do it, and the joy and the beauty, but also the spirit of exploration, and a frame of reference around what is the spirit of exploration. And for Brad, it was the sharing of it, and not just the conquering of these things, but how can future generations benefit for what he brought back, and continue to inspire and use that footage for conservation or understanding. And yeah, it was really just an ode to that. Exploration is sharing.
That's fantastic. That is Brad, and for sure, the sharing of it. Tell me a little bit about the Moose's Traverse for those who don't know. And I guess this was a Freddie secret for years, and you let it slip after having a couple of beers one night with Renan and his friends, and then this whole legend of the Moose's Traverse took shape, but it still took a few years. Can you explain that to me and let us know what it, give us a visual of it if you can't actually see it?
Sure, absolutely. So everybody's heard of Denali. Very few people have heard of the Great Gorge of the Ruth Glacier, which is just to the south of Denali. But it's some of the most tremendous topography in North America, if not the world. It's a much bigger canyon than the Grand Canyon. It is the largest canyon feature in North America. But the bottom half of it is covered with ice. And so that you have 5,000 foot big walls dropping from glaciated summits into the glacier, but then they continue another 3,000 to 4,000 feet below the surface of the glacier. And the Moose's Tooth is really more than one specific mountain like you might imagine in a picture. It's a very tangled, complicated web of peaks that occupies one side of that gorge. And it's just a place of deep energy, not to get touchy-feely, but I think lots of climbers and pilots, all sorts of folks have been to the gorge and felt its majesty and its pull. And so, yeah, the Tooth Traverse, I had been there as a young climber. Renan, Zach, and I, all three of us, kind of found the gorge separately in our early 20s. And as we made our way through climbing, and we kind of started to get to know each other a little bit, kind of climbed together separately. And yeah, I've never been good at keeping my mouth shut about projects. I would love to say that it's completely born of this altruistic, desire to share, as we sort of express in the film. But it's probably just because I got a loose mouth and I like to talk and jaw, and so I'm like, here's what I'm thinking about. And such was the case one night in Boulder. I think it was 2009, when I was there visiting, staying at Renan and Zach's house, and I knew they had a trip planned to Alaska, and it was like, oh, you gotta try this thing.
So one thing, the scene that I really love in this is that the reality of life kind of hits. And so Zach, who was supposed to be with you, basically kind of got a job and just said, dude, my life needs to move forward in this trajectory right now. So maybe regrettably, you guys went off to do it. And I felt like there's something very poignant in that, because we are very privileged to be able to go off on adventures like this. And we risk and spend so much time and money as well to do these things. Usually, at least the people that I've spent my time with, fully aware that this is not normal. And we are, there's a lot of humility, and you guys, you are two examples of humble people. We have to have big enough egos to go after crap like that, but reality sets in, and so you got to work, right? So there's that shot of him wrapping the Christmas lights around, taking them down from a house or putting them up, and it was like, whoa. So if you could just comment about like that. I love that scene. Knocks me over every time.
I'm glad that you picked up on that, because that was a big sub story for us. Is Zach was he's such a purist, and as you learn more and more about climbers and people who go after these mountains, there's like kind of different forms of it. There's like the Washburns who are like professionals, and they're getting big sponsors like National Geographic and things like some of the biggest publications on earth supporting these things. And that comes with a price of like what you're delivering and sharing from that. And then there's some climbers who don't have that self-promotional bone in their body, and they just want to do it for the complete purity of the experience, and they separate those two lives. And that was Zach, and we really wanted to lay that bare and not try to hide what that is, so people can see the realities of it. And yeah, we still have a great relationship with Zach, and the irony of it all is that we suffered for years and basically went into debt trying to make the film, while his Christmas light business ended up exploding, and he was doing these massive jobs. He's basically retired now. Like, he's like a billionaire. That after
irony.
Yeah, just kidding on the billionaire part, but he's done like super well, and he's found his own path in the mountains. And we, for a lot of times, we wanted to make the film more about him, and we thought he was a stronger character to drive it. And there's a lot of paths you go down making a film, but in the end, Zach played a really important role, not only in climbing the mountain, but also like giving that counterpoint to what is adventure, what is meaning in the mountains. And it's different for different people. Obviously for us, it was more of the Washburn style, where we just love the creative aspect, and it's hard to separate the creative aspect from the climb itself, but it's not for everyone.
Thank you. That's a great explanation and follow up to my question, if it even was a question. But so let's just talk about Brad Washburn real quick. So I'll do an introduction to this interview, but for those listening, Brad is credited as the modern day founder of the Boston Museum of Science, who also happened to do 13 first ascents in Alaska. And Ansel Adams called him the great aerial photographer, or the great aerial photographer of mountains, perhaps. And so Brad passed away in 2007 at 96. So we're looking at his first National Geographic Adventure sponsored expedition to do aerials, I think, in 1936. So we're talking almost 100 years ago, and Brad was truly breaking ground. And as you said, his driving force was to share the knowledge that he gained by being in the mountains and encouraging people to go to the mountains. And one little thing to add in that, of all the great accomplishments of Brad's life, to a T, every single time you ask him what's the greatest accomplishment in your life, and he always would say, number one, I married Barbara. Always, 100% of the time, never. That was number one. Everything else came after. So with that said, that's a pretty big inspiration. He inspired a lot of people, and you are making him, a rock god, if you will, in terms of how you're paying homage to him. So if you could just talk a little bit about Brad.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an honor to get to make a film about him, and getting to explore his network, all the places he left his fingerprints, is just fascinating and really pulled me in. And that's really how I connected with you, I think. You'll probably say this in the intro, but Tom was kind of Washburn's first documentarian, in a way, back when he was still alive. You shot with him quite extensively and did a trip to Alaska with him.
Yeah.
And your footage is heavily featured in our film, really. So thank you for all that. Huge. How we made a movie about Washburn was just standing on the shoulders of everybody who he had inspired and connected with. And we have astronauts and fine art photographers supporting voices in the film.
Great writers, David.
Yeah, David Roberts, and great mountaineering and adventure writer, and a lot of neat people. Although I never had a chance to meet him, myself, I liken him to sort of a real life Indiana Jones figure, because he had the Boston Museum of Science. It was his day job. He wore a suit and tie and shook hands with important people, and then on the weekend he'd put on his fedora and go hang out the door of an airplane or something. And growing up as a kid, I loved Indiana Jones.
It's a natural. Renan, so in terms of the Washburn connection, he was truly remarkable person of that generation, and I know we're friends and everything, but I look at you as like you're the modern day, have the eye and of that artistic photographer and filmmaker that probably Brad would have liked to be, in terms of the pictures and images that you've created. You've flown drones and done dramatic time lapses up to the summit of Mount Everest from many thousands of feet below. So in terms of the beautiful things you've created with Freddie as your partner in this, gosh, man, you're doing someone like Brad Washburn a heck of a lot of justice, and I'm sure his family and relatives are just going to gush over this.
Yeah, it's crazy. The spirit of Washburn is strong, I never met him personally either, but yeah, so he's so ahead of his time, and his, those giant 8x10 negatives are going to stand the test of time. There's still not a lot of modern cameras that can touch it, and it's going to remain inspiration for like a lot of generations to come.
So I know you guys both have to go in a short bit, so let me ask you, and I'll hopefully do justice to introducing the film. You guys pursued this career hard, and you paid the price along the way. It wasn't always, not that, it's all, glory and red carpet or anything, even though we look forward to the red carpet of this film. But you pay the price because you believe so strongly in what you want to do in your life. This is about pursuing and going after what you truly love and what's in your heart, and you're not willing to do anything other than that, despite, if you will, the collateral damage of going after it. A lot of couches, a lot of tuna casserole for dinner and things like that. So am I on target with that? Have you guys truly, like, you really do epitomize people just believing in one's, if you will, directive and doing it no matter what?
Did I say it all?
No, that's thank you. I think we, it feels more like it. It was just this creative process that we started without really knowing what we were getting into. With this one, and it got kind of felt like it kept getting harder and harder the closer we got, I think. And but it also, there's something that I think was nice, and that, if we had taken, say, that proverbial, check from a sponsor 6 years ago or 8 years ago and finished the movie real quick, I'm not sure if it would have, had the time to kind of marinate and get to where it is.
Renan, yeah, you there was some thick times, as Freddie was just referring to, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely almost fell apart multiple times, and it was not easy to have this passion project and always in the background, trying to figure out how to move it along. It was, I don't think a lot of people realize just how some of these documentaries that you see, maybe they're funded from the beginning and that's your full-time job. But Freddie and I both had multiple other full-time jobs, and Freddie was starting a family with 2 little ones, and it's a lot to bring a feature documentary to fruition. But I think it is like, this is the moment where it all kind of coalesces, and you finally have people like yourself getting to see it, and then like mainstream things like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Guardian are reviewing it, which is just surreal. And the way that it seems like all the audiences, everyone that's watched it picks up on something different, and we think that this is going to be a meaningful contribution in the tapestry of all these different powerful climbing films and exploration films in its own way. And hopefully it'll have this like long, slow burn that kind of lasts and does justice to like that question that we were talking about, like, what's the meaning to it all? And even the context of the last few years, how exploration has changed. And now both Freddie and myself and all of us as a community, we're like, oh, it's about way more than just ourselves and these kind of white guy explorations, these privileged white guy explorations, and what can we do in the future. And we hope that some of this footage can be used for conservation purposes and continue to be used by Denali National Park for education. And yeah, there's a lot there that hopefully will live on beyond just the adventure of the Tooth Traverse. That's all tied into the ethos of Washburn from the beginning.
Freddie, Renan, thank you for taking the time to tell us about your film. In the liner notes of this video or podcast episode will be links to where you can find out more about Sanctity of Space on their Facebook page, on a landing page for their website, and also theaters where you might be able to go see it yourself.